What does it mean to be part of a family? When you think of family, who do you think of? Do you think of your mom and dad, the people you live with, your extended family? When my mom and her siblings were growing up, they would hear stories about their Italian family. My grandmother had always wanted to visit them, but never got around to it, nor she knew where they lived. She used to tell us that we had roots in northern Italy, that it was a part of us. I chose this independent trimester because I wanted to find out what that part of me was. I wrote about the recipes that were passed down by my grandma when I was in 10-11, and that was one of the moments that made me wonder about my heritage. Why was I connected to this place I'd never been? How was I connected to a family I'd never met? I wanted to learn more about that part of myself that I couldn't possibly have an understanding of without going to visit. While this is partly for me to find a new part of myself, it was also for my grandma to finally connect to her long-lost family that she grew up hearing stories about. I wanted to learn more about what it meant to be Italian. I don't look even remotely Italian, so it's something that made me wonder what it really meant. It's not about color or language. To me, it was about the importance of family and our connections to others. I found that in Italy. I had a newfound cultural and self-awareness, and I started to understand where these family stories and traditions came from. They are all a part of me and who I am. I was connected to Italy because of growing up hearing stories about my family tradition and history. I was connected to the people I'd never met because we shared that same history and tradition. It pulled us together more than just a blood relation. I was part of a family I'd never met, and they welcomed me in with kisses on my cheeks. I am grateful that I had the opportunity to establish a connection with my Italian roots. My project connects to the Safe School mission through the human ecology principle of social environment, which is evident throughout my experiences. I found that my research directly correlated to my real-life experience. My thesis states, Italian-American women, while appearing on the surface to have traditional gender roles, actually use food to maintain power, are the hearts of their families, and are the keepers of culture across 2 continents. My own family, as well as my cousins, have a strong women at the head of our households, create fond memories through cherished recipes, and pass down history and tradition throughout generations. I found connections to women, food, and family because I traveled with a group of women, my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, and my sister. It felt empowering to be supported by a group of such strong women who care about me. The cousins that I met showed us family recipes that were passed down by their mother, and I found myself connected to the family I went with and the family I met through deep memories and relationships with the women I went with, and creating new relationships with the cousins because of our shared ancestry. There was a study conducted that I related to most. It was created by a mother-daughter research team, and their subjects were all women. They said, many brought recipes to the interview that they recalled from memory, some writing them down for the first time for our conversation. They learned these recipes from their mothers, aunts, grandmothers, often observing and mentally recording the cooking methods and techniques in a group, in crowded kitchens with women working all at once. They interpret and reinterpret these recipes through collectives. That is my personal experience. My grandmother made my mom a recipe book full of family recipes that have been passed down generations. For example, snickerdoodles. When I was younger, every time we'd visit my grandma, we would help her make snickerdoodles. She would let us pour in the flour and roll lumpy balls of dough, and she would let us eat raw bites of dough, just a little sneak. And she taught us how to roll the balls in cinnamon sugar with perfect balance. To this day, snickerdoodles are my favorite cookies, not just because they taste amazing, but because I have that memory of making them with my grandma. My mom plans to make me a recipe book when I'm older, which I plan on using to teach my kids and grandkids how to make snickerdoodles and more. I brought her recipe book with me today, if anyone wants to take a look at that. Some of those recipes came from Italy, and my cousins have the same ones. I never thought that I would feel what the women felt in that study, but I realized that feeling that I had was what I felt with my grandma. Her grandma passed those recipes to her mom to her, and my mom to me. Now I'm learning and observing so I can pass those recipes to future generations. I went to Italy to meet my 4th cousins, who are on my great-great-grandmother Elena's side of the family. They live in the Riverola area and near the city of Turin. Their names are Anna Marie and Elena. They're 69 and 65. They have kids and grandkids and have lived their lives and are experiencing and have experienced the memories that will be remembered by their family. On our 4th day in Italy, we went to Riverola in the Piedmontese region. We had just arrived at our hotel when these women came up to us and started kissing our cheeks, and we're just like, what is happening? But we kind of went with it, kissed their cheeks back, and they turned out to be our cousins. And so they introduced themselves, and then they whisked us off to a coffee shop where we tried to communicate with them, but they didn't speak very much English, and unfortunately, we didn't speak a lot of Italian, but we made it work. We had a multi-generational experience through my mom and her second cousins, my grandma and her second cousins, my aunt, my mom, and my sister. It was a unique connection that was instant, because although we'd never met them, they were so similar to us. They acted just like my grandma, and we talked about how I was like Anne Marie and my sister was like Elena because of how loud Marcella is and how quiet I am. I'd never felt that connection or likeness towards any new person, but I did with them. I conducted an interview with Anna and Elena for future generations in my American family, so they can understand who their family in Italy were. I'd like to share part of that interview with you all.
Come descriveresti la tua famiglia?
Una famiglia semplice, unita, con una mamma generale, papà molto dolce.
A very simple family, but very united, with a mother who was a general in the family and a very sweet father.
Tu?
Idem, però io ero la cocca del nonno Pinotto.
The same, but she was the favorite of his grandfather. Cosa significa essere italiani?
Adesso potrei dire qualcosa del Bagia, ma non posso.
Sì, che sarebbe appartenere a un bellissimo paese, purtroppo mal governato.
To belong to a beautiful place, unfortunately very badly run.
Anch'io sono orgogliosa di essere italiana, però lascerei, però se fosse governato da altre persone.
But it should be run from other people, other politicians. Quale ricetta della tua famiglia la tua preferita?
Quella
Zuppa di cavolo.
sì.
Quello che si fa
La zuppa di cavolo della
Il cavolo.
Zuppa di cavolo è quella che si fa.
Sì, no, ma il cavolo.
Cavolo.
Cabbage, sì. Cabbage soup. It's a soup you make especially for the Day of the Dead, on November the 2nd.
Sì.
che faceva la mia mamma e la mia nonna.
It's a recipe. It's one of her grandmother's recipes, and it's a very poor food. You make it with cabbage leaves and pieces of pork and cheese, bread.
Infatti il sangue lo facciamo ancora adesso.
It's a tradition to make it because in November it was a time when the pork were killed, and so you added the bones because then you boiled the bones to make the broth, and it was also the time for cabbages.
Anche, ma penso anche per te, anche per me.
And you know that in this area you prepare the soup the day before, il soup il giorno prima, and then you leave it on the table for the night. You remove the keys from the doors because the spirit of dead people can enter the house through the hole, the door, and eat the soup, and the day after you eat.
Mi piace, sono creativa in cucina, con poco so cucinare all'estero.
She's very creative in cooking with a few things. She can make, invent dishes.
Per me il pesce.
Fish.
Fish. Che preferisco il pesce alla carne.
She prefers the fish to meat.
Pesce di mare o pesce di fiume? No, quello che trovo fresco quando vado a comprare.
Both river and sea fish.
Può essere salmone, può essere pesce spada, può essere qualsiasi, quello che trovo.
They were extremely welcoming and asked us to stay for lunch. Up until this point in my trip, I hadn't really thought about my connection to food. In all the cities I visited, I was thinking about the regional food, but this lunch was different. It was more personal. There were drinks all over their large renovated table in the greenhouse, and they brought out pizza after pizza until it physically hurt to eat another bite. But they kept coming. We ate 9 pizzas, and the most bizarre was a blue cheese and apple, which we thought was dessert. Then 3 more came after it. My favorite was a simple cheese and cherry tomato. By far the best pizza I've ever had. Cousin Tony, Anna Marie's husband, made a delicious chocolate cake from scratch. It's a recipe I plan to pass down to future generations. I had a strong sense of belonging at their table, and it reminded me of the meaning of La Familia. La Familia is the most important aspect of an Italian's life. It provides emotional and economic support to the individual and often forms the basis of their social circles. They wanted to share their cooking with us, and they wanted us to feel at home. I read during my research that Italian-American women used food to show that they could take care of their families. I truly felt like they cared for me more than long-lost family. I felt as if I'd been going to lunches at their house for years. We were laughing and talking animatedly, which was very Italian-esque. The experience felt like something I'd read during my research. Claudia Fisher's article on food, self, and identity in the Social Science Information says, "Food and eating, an intensely emotional experience that is intertwined with embodied sensations and strong feelings, central to individuals' subjectivity and their sense of distinction from others." I felt like my family really belonged to them. It was unexpected. I was expecting maybe like a quick coffee, a little talking, and then we would be on our way. But it was a full-on gathering where they created an emotional atmosphere. Although pizza is not from the Piedmontese region, they showed us many recipes that are from the family, such as polenta, which is made from cornmeal, breadsticks, and torcetti, which is similar to a breadstick, but softer and coated in sugar. I made them for everyone and would love if you'd like to try them at the end. I made these foods because they were important staples in my family's lives. They are things that I've grown up eating and are recipes that have been passed down through my family. We also had polenta when we were in Italy, and it's right up at the top. It was grilled. And my family's from the Piedmontese, is from Casalmonte, which is in the Piedmontese region in northern Italy. And we have a family recipe I chose not to make for you all because it's pretty interesting. It's called veal with tuna sauce. It's a thin-boiled veal with tuna and mayo sauce, which has a very unique flavor. It's not as bad as it looks or sounds, but it's not something I really would enjoy eating a lot. There's another recipe that I didn't get to try called bagna calda, which is similar to fondue and made with garlic and anchovies that you dip vegetables into. My grandma talked about it our entire trip. Every city we went to, she looked for it on every menu. So I know it's something that is worth trying, and she plans to make it for us in the future. There's so many different family recipes and stories that I got to hear from my cousins. I feel like this unique experience brought me closer to my family and showed me that food is the center of Italian families. I interviewed my aunt and mom on their perspectives of the trip. I think it was important for them because they grew up hearing stories from my grandma. I want to play a few parts of that interview.
To meet them and see how lovely they are, they were so welcoming and really embraced us as part of the family. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think my experience is when the two sisters first met our mom, how they looked alike
acted like, I mean, completely family.
Mannerisms.
Yeah, so it was so cute. They kissed us and grabbed our hands, especially our moms, and off they went. So you could tell, like, oh yeah,
They are family. I think it made a huge difference that it was all women.
Yeah, I think that women are the ones in the family who carry on traditions, who carry down recipes, who carry down the family importance and energy and that culture.
And value.
And I think it was neat, such a special experience for especially Nona and Clara and Marcella to have the grandmother and the granddaughters like have a 10-day trip where we get this dedicated time together. It was great.
Yeah, beyond meeting the relatives.
Yeah.
It was important for us together as well.
A large part of my research focused on women and their role in family, culture, and food. And being with the women in my family in Italy was an important part of why I was there. We are passing down these traditions and stories, and that's why it made it more impactful for me. I also think it's really special that the cousins that I met are the women passing down their side of the family. I've talked about my grandma throughout my presentation, and I decided I wanted to show her thoughts because she was the one who sparked the idea for my independent trimester.
This has been one of the greatest trips I have taken. I've traveled to quite a few places in the world and had some very good trips, but this one was especially special. It was special for many reasons. One, of course, the obvious reason is I got to connect with my second cousins and got to learn a little more about the background of my family, where my grandmother came from. As far as my grandmother's family, I have a lot of questions answered, and I was very close to my grandmother, and she was a wonderful grandmother to me. This trip is also special because my two daughters and my two granddaughters were able to share this experience with me. So the family that they met and the heritage that they experienced was also their family and their heritage, and we all experienced it together. Thank you, Claire, for having this project, because that's what spurred us all to going to Italy, meeting my cousins, which was one of the highlights of my life. And the welcome they gave us was unbelievable. It was certainly a lot more than I anticipated. We had a wonderful day. We saw the family home that the family still owns, and they're renovating it. And that was a special treat. And the welcome they gave us, and the dinner that they made, and just the warm feelings they gave us were just unremarkable.
After we got to the hotel on the day we met my cousins, my grandma pulled me into a hug and she started crying. She thanked me for taking her on the trip. She said she wouldn't have met them without me. I was the person who helped her see the people she'd been dreaming of meeting her whole life. I got to do that for her and for myself. It was a reaffirmation of my family identity and showed me how important it can be to form connections that will last a lifetime. I want to thank my mom for helping me to make my independent trimester happen, my aunt for being the planner and tour guide, my sister for being my companion, and my grandma for going on this journey with me. Thank you.
How did you get in touch with your Italian family, or did you have a long-term connection with them?
My mom's cousin Jeff his dad used to send money to them, and he had a connection with them and used to visit them. So he had an address from around 2005. So I translated and sent letters to them like 2 months before we went on the trip, and I sent them my email, and they ended up emailing us back.
Okay.
Yes.
It's interesting seeing that you wanted to pause and look into your ancestry and look into the past when you're at this precipice of stepping into something new in your future. And I'm wondering
important now because I am starting a new chapter in my life, and I feel like I found a part of my identity, so I feel like I'm more whole of a person so that I can go into this new chapter. Yes.
Claire, thank you so much. It was so fun listening to those gals speak in Italian, and just it was beautiful. And it made me wonder about your Italian, and maybe perhaps if any of your knowledge of Spanish helped you with being able to understand your cousins.
It actually did. It's interesting, similar but not the same, so I had an easier time understanding, but I could not speak it very well. I ended up learning 10 words. Yes?
Claire, I didn't realize your Italian ancestry. Bobby's half Italian as well, and I couldn't believe just watching this how much it related to our family as well. And not so much a question, but just, I guess, a thought of how connected we are to our ancestors without even realizing it. You didn't know these people, yet you have all these similarities. And I think it would be just really enjoyable to meet my ancestors, Bobby's family as well, just to sort of connect with those roots.
Yeah, it was really an awesome experience.
Claire, I have a two-part question. The first part is, I'm wondering if you were at the same school in the 6th and 7th grade.
I was not.
You were not. Okay, so you didn't do... the second part of this is, currently the 6th and 7th graders are in the year of self and have undertaken partially this trimester, something similar to what your tri is, but maybe but definitely on kind of a lesser scale, exploring, their family history and also doing that through food and kind of recipes being passed down. And I'm wondering if maybe you have anything for them as you kind of are ready to take a step into a new stage of life. If you see this, I try and this kind of focus providing any value for you moving forward.
I think it definitely provides value. I feel like I got to understand where I came from and why, sort of the way that I am. And I think it's important to be able to pass down the stories and traditions that we learn when we're younger, because it's kind of parts of us that are not going to go away. Yes?
Yeah, I just have a question. You just did something similar in Greece with our family, and you focused mainly on the women. Did you get a sense as to the role of the men? Because for us, I was surprised by how much the men wanted to welcome us in. And then also the second piece of that is on my Italian side, there was conflict. Could you guys talk a little bit about the history of the family conflict and how everybody wants to draw you together, but they're also getting conflict that separate, and who tries to pull everybody back?
So, to answer the second part of your question first, someone in my family had stopped giving money to these Italian relatives, and when they left to come to America, they were taken out of their wills and not part of their families anymore. So it's actually really interesting to be welcomed in so openly by them when we went. It's definitely something that we weren't expecting, but it was really amazing. And then can you repeat the first part of your question?
I was just interested on the role of the male. If you had a sense of that, I know you focused on it.
So I had only met the husbands of my cousins, and then one of their kids. They had two sons, Daniel and Luca, who are in their 40s. So I met them, and they were more reserved, quiet. Cousin Tony, who made the chocolate cake, was very sweet, really funny. But I would say they didn't play as big of a part in why I was there. And we didn't get to contact my great-great-grandfather's side. And then I have some food that you can all come up and try. I have torcetti, polenta, and breadsticks that I made yesterday.